So there's a new project that's been brought to the table here. It's a challenge actually for a D&D board game. I don't play D&D myself, but I love building these types of medieval structures. So the challenge is to build the best medieval farmhouse that you can possibly come up with. So I printed this one up to model my build after. It should be pretty cool. It's very medieval looking, basically a farmhouse. And I'm going to use a bunch of different materials in the build. So I'm probably going to use some of this, I'm not sure yet, but some of this polyform modeling clay. Definitely going to use this Dollar Tree foam core board, which is just paper. I peel off the paper and use the foam in there. And definitely going to be using XPS foam. This is the insulation foam from Home Depot. So I'll be cutting some of that up on the hot wire table. But let's start building. I'll take you along the way and show you all the steps that I use to make this medieval farmhouse. Let's get going. All right, I have the basic foundation of the house cut out here. I've got the base plate here for the foundation. I've got my two side walls and the front and rear of the farmhouse. So next what I'm going to do is peel off the paper on one side. I'm going to leave the paper on the other side just because it makes it a little bit stronger, and I'm going to put some texture on this. So I'll probably take the paper off after I do the texture. I've got quite a few choices when it comes to making brick imprints and wood grain. So if you can see, these there are 3D rollers, and these make great impressions on this type of foam. There's a wood grain one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the brick pattern on the sides of the houses here. You can see the brick detail in there. And I think the best one for that is going to be this template right here. I like this one a lot. This one is nice too, but it's a little big for the scale of this thing, and I think this is too. I do like this as well, but maybe for a bigger structure. So we're gonna go with this and see how it turns out. Once we have all the patterns in the foam here, the brick patterns, I'm going to go ahead and peel off the backs of the foam because you can see it's a little bit warped, and as soon as you take the paper off, it should straighten back up. So we'll take that off, and yeah, that's much better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece for the inside here so that I can glue all these pieces together. It'll be a lot easier to do it that way, and I just think it'll be stronger. So now I've got this piece cut out, and it's just going to help me glue all these pieces together. All right, I've got an extra piece of foam right here. It's already got some texture on it. I was using it for something else, but I'm going to use it for the roof because it is about the right size that I need. Might have to cut it this way. But anyways, I'll measure it out. It looks like about 5.5 inches or so should do it. And we're going to be putting shingles on the roof, so we don't have to worry about what this looks like. Next I'm going to need some 1/2-inch pieces of the XPS foam, and this I'm going to use for the corners, the wood corners of the farmhouse. I'm going to use this wood grain roller to put in the wood patterns. So I just put it on here like this, and we're just going to roll it over these pieces to get the wood grain. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces here, 3 1/4. And these are going to go on the corner piece here, but what I have to do is I have to cut out an L shape out of here. So I'm actually going to go back to the hot wire cutter, and I'm going to do something like this. Okay, and that's going to give me this nice L shape. I've got my corner pieces here, and I'm just trimming the angle here for these to go up underneath the roof, and you can just kind of eyeball this. So I've got all 4 corner pieces on there. Now you don't want to glue these on yet because we have to paint these separately. It's going to be way too hard to paint after you already have them on there. So take those off. I made this front door for the farmhouse with some XPS foam around the sides with some wood grain, and then air dry clay is what I used for the actual door, and I just put wood grain in it. So that's going to be the front door, and then I've also made some windows, and these were originally made out of air dry clay, and I use them all the time, so I've molded this, and so I just have these on hand. Otherwise, air dry clay is fine, and then XPS foam for the windowsill. I've got all the components of my medieval farmhouse cut out now. So I've got all the wood pieces, I've got some windows, there's the concrete slab here, and I've got some extra wood pieces because I know there's going to be some extra stuff to do on there. But what we're going to do now is coat it with Mod Podge and black paint. So Mod Podge matte, make sure you use matte, and then black paint. And so I just mix that up. You don't need too much black paint, just enough to give a nice dark color. Okay, so we're going to seal everything, start painting all these pieces, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so I'm going to experiment with a couple of different color schemes here. I've done wood grain a bunch of times, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. So I'm just going to experiment again and see what I like the best. Burnt umber is a good color to start with. Another way to do it is to use a golden brown, and then we go with an ink stain over that. I'm going to use a Liquitex brown acrylic ink for the wood trim pieces and the door, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it right on there. You can water this down if you want, and you may need more than one coat, but I find that if I just put it on right out of the bottle, one coat is usually enough. So just go ahead and spread it all over, and I'll use it for the wood timber pieces as well. And this will give a nice wood grain, and the ink will actually soak into the crevices there and really show the wood grain. I found the best way to make these wood tiles on the roof is to not cut them out individually, but in strips using this XPS foam and the hot wire cutting table to make the little individual cuts. And then I'll go back and cut an 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch strip, which I can just layer all the way up from the bottom to the top of the roof. Makes it a lot easier. Now we're going to come back with our wood grain roller and put the pattern on the tiles. I usually make 2 or 3 passes over this to get a deeper wood grain. Once you've done that, I take it back over to the hot wire cutter and just put a random pattern on the bottom part of these tiles.
After that, we're going to go back to the hot wire cutting table and we're going to slice these about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. When you're gluing these to the roof, make sure that you stagger the tiles so they're not all lining up. And just keep adding them until you reach the top of the roof, and all you have to do is finish with the top. And when you're done, it should look something like this.
This is just a sample of a stamp that I usually go with this color scheme for castles when I'm building a castle. It has that dark kind of gray look with the black wash on it. So since this is not a castle, I wanted to have a little more earthy tone. And I did some color schemes over here for the stone, and I think that I like the lighter look better. I can go dark and sort of gray and brown, and then I lightened it up a little bit here, but I really like the way that looks. We're going with the tan base coat here, and you want to give this a full coat. Don't worry about the covering up the black. A lot of times when you paint these things, you are supposed to leave the black in between,
but it's really not necessary. So just give this a good, probably 2 coats. Once you go over it once, go over it twice, and cover up all the black areas, and then we'll move on to the next step.
The color scheme that I've chosen for the roof here is going to be a base after the Mod Podge. Then we're going to go with a burnt umber, and then I'm going to do a dry brush with golden brown, and I think I'm going to just do a little white or a light gray highlight with this granite gray, and just a very little bit of this. So I'll show you how that looks.
We're starting with a dry brush of golden brown on the roof. Just make sure that when you load up the paintbrush, get the paint off. Use a paper towel, get most of the paint off of the brush, and then you're just going to lightly brush it over the surface to get this texture.
Back to the roof. Now I'm going to do a very light dry brush with white. I want to make sure you just barely have some paint on here. It's really almost just paint powder at this point. It's not, there's barely anything on the brush. Need a little bit more, but this is just minimal amount of paint.
Admittedly, I do this every once in a while, and I skipped over a whole bunch of paint schemes for this sandstone. So I'm going to go back and review it for you, and just start with the Mod Podge Black. And then if you remember, what I did is I used a khaki tan for the next coat.
And the next layer is going to be a dry brush of granite gray, which is kind of a light gray. We don't need a lot of paint because this is a dry brush technique. So we want to actually take some of the paint off of here, and just really lightly, you just want to get a pattern of gray across these stones.
What we're trying to do is get the paint to just hit the top parts of the stone and just highlight it, and it actually makes it pop out a little bit more.
As far as painting the roof here, I've got a few options. I could do a black wash after I've got all my other layers here, or a brown wash. And I'm thinking, since this is wood, it just seems like the brown wash is going to go better with that. So this is basically very simple wash. It's water, brown paint, and just a drop or two of dishwashing liquid. Dawn is what I use. So we're going to take this and we're going to wash the roof here with our brown wash, and that should give us a nice wood tone. Working on the windows now. What I want to do is get a look of a darker, like a slate stone, which probably will come close to this when I'm done. So to do that, I'm going to use kind of a medium dark gray And we're dry brushing here, so make sure you take most of the paint off of the brush. And then we're just going to hit it real lightly and try and leave a little bit of black in the grooves here if you can, because that will just establish the sort of grout lines of the stone.
After this step, I'm going to give it a dry brush of light granite, and then we'll go ahead and do the black wash.
Instead of brown, because I want these to look a little bit more like stone, so I'm going to, the black wash again is water, black paint. It's watered down paint. It's mostly water, a little bit of black paint, and a drop or two of dishwashing detergent. So I'm ready to put some of the detail pieces on here. I've got the corner sort of wood frame pieces, so we're going to hot glue those on. And what I don't want is for any of the glue to squish out from this seam right here, because it doesn't look good.
Now we're going to go ahead and add all of our wood trim pieces. We're going to glue on the corners and all of the wood planks on the front, back, and sides of the house. And then after we finish that, we're going to put the windows and finishing details on the rest of the farmhouse.
Okay, I've got one in there successfully. Let's get the other one. I actually broke this piece while I was trying to bend it and get it to fit, so I'm just going to try and make this work. This door is going to be recessed into the brick here on the front. If you can see on the back, I've got a little edge here that I need to cut out here so that this fits a little bit more flush on the front of the farm. So I've already marked it out, and I'm just going to give it a rough cut here. I'm going to put a back door on here, and this is a precast door that I have. Otherwise you can make it out of foam, but I just figured I might as well put on a back door. Right about here.
After the door's on, I'm just going to continue putting all the wood trim pieces on. I've got these curved ones that are a little bit tricky, but if you're using the Dollar Tree foam, you should be able to curve these without breaking them.
So what I'm going to do for my windows here is I'm basically just going to take I had some cardstock. You can use any kind of thick paper that you might have. Just paint it black with the black paint, and I have this screen material that is exactly that. It's for replacing screens on your house. So I always use the screens as the backing for my windows. So I'm going to put it on the back here, and we're just going to trace the inside of the window. And then we're just going to cut this out a little bit bigger so that it fits the back. As usual, I find a way to work in one extra little detail into my build here, so you don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it because it popped in my head and now I can't get it out. I just wanted to make a simple stone frame for the back door on this hut, on the farmhouse. So I'm basically going to put a frame right around this door here.
The idea for the door frame is the same as the windows. We're basically just using Dollar Tree foam, carving in the bricks, and then we're just going to sand it up and paint it up, just like we did the windows. And as you can see here, I broke my piece, but that's okay. Just keep going, glue it back together, and paint it. We're going to add the rest of the wood detail now. We're going to trim up the wood planks, and we're also going to add the windows on the sides, and also we have window sills that go under there with the same XPS foam, and just painted the same way in the same wood scheme. Now I'm going to add some timbers underneath the window sills. You can see how I did this on the other side here, so I'm just going to replicate that. And this is going to add some nice detail to the piece, which I think gives it a nice medieval look, if you will. So of course I always think I'm done with these builds, and then I think, well, you know, if this farmhouse has a chimney on it, why shouldn't it have a stack of firewood in back? So we're going to go ahead and cut this branch into logs, and then we will split the logs into quarters and make our wood pile.
I just use a chisel and a hammer, and there you go, just like chopping wood. So there's your little pieces here. And what I did actually is I put my pieces of wood in my brown wash here. You can see that these look a little bit brown. So I actually put these in my brown wash, let them sit there for a few minutes, and then just pull them out. And then as far as the construction of this, it's basically just same frame pieces as the wood here. I just have two sides, a bottom, and then I used some painted wire that I just cut for the top there for support. And that's my little firewood rack. I realized I left you hanging on the chimney part here. I didn't include that in the video. I make these in advance, and they're just out of the Dollar Tree foam. Just individual square pieces that are cut. The brick patterns put in there, and they're stacked together and glued. And then I've got a top and a bottom here, and the top part for the chimney. So I'll cut this in half, and I'll use it for my farmhouse build. And again, I'll make another video on this so you can see how to make and paint these. I decided to add some flocking to the front porch here, or just basically moss. And what we need is just some watered down XPS glue, and we're just going to paint these in some of the cracks here on the porch. And then we're going to go ahead and add our flocking on there. So just sprinkle a little turf on here. And that just adds a great look to the aging of the deck. I just finished painting the frame for the door, and I think that just adds a nice little detail with the stone frame. I hope you enjoyed this video of my medieval farmhouse build. This was a fun project. It came out better than expected. So please send me your comments if you have any, like us, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you in our next build or challenge. See you next time.